Some video games come back because people simply just miss them. A lot. Others come back because the industry suddenly realizes they were ahead of their time the whole way through. That's basically what's happening with Golden Axe right now. See, for many years, the franchise sat quietly in the background of gaming history like this forgotten fantasy legend that everybody respected but nobody really believed would return properly. People remember the arcade cabinets, the giant beasts, the magic attacks filling the screen, warriors fighting through the dark fantasy world, monsters pouring from every direction. See, the original Golden Axe was pretty simple in its setup. It was a dark fantasy land under the rule of a tyrant. It was 3 warriors with their own reasons for fighting, and it was a journey across these ruined villages, lands, enemy-filled paths were leading toward a final confrontation. But what made it actually stick wasn't the story itself, it was how it was delivered, through movement, through combat, through the golden music, and just the way the world felt hostile and every path you took. A remake has to keep that feeling, not by copying it directly, but by understanding why it worked, Imagine that world rebuilt with modern design, not as an open world sandbox game, but as a focused, curated adventure where every location has purpose. These dense environments that feel alive with it, details, forests that feel just thick and dangerous. Maybe ruins that carry a sense of history as well. Villages, of course, the same old villages that look like they've been broken and abandoned, now just with a modern feel to it. Not just basically placed for decoration. Because look, Golden Axe was pretty much, and a lot of times, about the atmosphere. And modern technology can really push that atmosphere like a world further. Lighting becomes a tool, shadow stretches and shifts as you move. Fire doesn't just sit in the background, it flickers, reacts, casts movement across the environment. Weather adds weight to scenes. Why not? Whether if it's rain soaking the battlefield, or wind carrying debris across your path, or even affecting the enemies and yourself, these aren't just visual upgrades, they could shape how the game feels moment to moment. And then, of course, there's the most important element, the combat, because that's where Golden Axe lives and dies. The original game was about timing, spacing, and the impact, of course. Hits felt heavy, movement felt deliberate. You weren't just mashing buttons, you were managing space against multiple enemies at once. A remake can take that foundation and build something deeper without losing that core. Combat could become more fluid, more responsive, but still grounded. Weapons could carry weight, different attacks have purpose, enemies don't just walk towards you, they coordinate, surround, pressure. Now, one of the biggest opportunities with a remake like this is, of course, the character presence. The original trio, or later down the line, the added characters, were pretty iconic, but they were also limited by the technology of the time. We think a remake can expand who they are without turning the game into something overly narrative. Small moments, reactions between the battles, subtle interactions with the world itself. Well, basically enough to give them identity without slowing down the experience, because this isn't a game that should stop often, it should move forward. Always forward. That sense of progression is simply the key. Golden Axe was built on momentum. You fight, you move, you fight again. A remake can enhance that flow by designing levels that just feel connected. Not just separate stages, paths that transition naturally, encounters that feel like part of a larger journey rather than isolated events, and maybe even choices. Not massive branching narratives, but small decisions that change how sections play out. Different routes, different encounters, different pacing. Enough variation to make repeat playthroughs feel fresh without breaking the core structure. Because replayability just matters for a game like this. It always did. Then there's of course the co-op. This is simply non-negotiable. Golden Axe was built for shared play. 2 players fighting side by side, managing enemies, timing attacks, sometimes getting in each other's way. That chaos is just part of the charm. Well, a remake is to bring that back both locally and online and just make it feel seamless. Because the experience changes when you're not alone. The strategy changed, the pacing changed, the energy changes. And that's something modern games sometimes overlook. Technically speaking, this remake has the potential to stand out without needing to be massive in scope. It doesn't need a 100-hour campaign or endless side content, it just needs precision. Polished systems, strong art direction, the kind of visual identity that just makes every frame recognizable. Because Golden Axe has a look, a tone, a feeling. And if a remake leans into that instead of chasing trends, it can actually carve out its own space in a crowded market right now. There's always a risk with projects like this. The risk of overcomplicating things. Of adding too many systems, too many mechanics, too much weight to something that worked because it was direct. We think a remake has to avoid that. It can change, it can expand, but it can't lose focus. Because the moment it stops being immediate, it just stops being Golden Axe, and that's the line developers would need to respect. At the same time, the industry is in a place where something like this could actually stand out. There's a gap for focused action-driven experiences that don't really rely on massive open worlds or constant updates. A Golden Axe remake could fill that gap by offering something tighter, more intense, more deliberate. Something you can just pick up and fill instantly, but still master over time. That balance is rare and it's valuable. Looking at the broader landscape, there's also a growing appreciation for classic franchises being reimagined the right way. Not just updated visuals, but also built with an understanding of what made them work in the first place. But nobody expected Sega to seriously actually bring it back at a AAA level. Now, suddenly, that's exactly what appears to be happening right now. After Sega officially announced large-scale revivals of multiple classic franchises during the Game Awards 2023, including Crazy Taxi, Jet Set Radio, Shinobi, Streets of Rage, and Golden Axe, the entire conversation around this series has changed ever since. And this was no longer just fans wishing for a comeback. Sega themselves confirmed it. And honestly, well, the timing could not be better right now. Fantasy games lean heavily toward giant RPG systems, open world checkpoints, slow progression mechanics. Golden Axe represents something completely different, which is just pure action, brutal combat, monsters, magic, fast pacing. A dark fantasy world that feels ancient, at the same time dangerous, and mythology instead of overly just simply complicated, which is simply a part of why people remember it so fondly. Now modern technology can finally turn that old arcade vision into something much bigger. The interesting thing is that this isn't actually the first time Sega tried to revive Golden Axe. Over the years, several remakes and reboot concepts reportedly entered development before ultimately getting cancelled internally. In fact, one of the most famous examples was Golden Axe, a prototype reboot project that Sega eventually released publicly as a playable proof of concept during its 60th anniversary celebration. And that matters because it proves something important, which is that Sega never really stopped thinking about Golden Axe. Right now, gaming feels hungry for this identity all over again. Players are tired of fantasy worlds that are all blurred together. They want games that feel distinct immediately. Golden Axe absolutely has that potential. Dark fantasy, the arcade brutality, huge monsters, the ancient magic, fast action, that combination still feels unique decades later. And honestly, that's why people keep talking about this remake with so much excitement right now. Because they can already picture it. I mean, I can already picture it. The warriors, the storm clouds, the magic, lighting up the battlefields in all glory and creativity, all that, and buried underneath all of it, the return of one of Sega's oldest legends finally waking up again after years of silence.